A word I think gets overused a lot these days, and believe me, I'm as guilty of this as anyone, is trauma. I don't think it's bad that we talk about trauma as a thing because trauma is real and we should be talking about it. We should be recognizing it in all of its forms. But specifically to this podcast, it's hard not to talk about 21st century horror films without bringing up trauma as a topic. Many contemporary horror premises are built upon suppressed trauma. That ghost, historical trauma. That demon, present trauma. That curse, future trauma. Trauma, trauma, trauma. Horror movies, from my limited vantage point, have historically gone through phases of what the real horror is. Sure, trauma is always present in horror films throughout time, but art works in waves and trends. And I'd like to posit that a trend in the 80s and 90s of horror was not necessarily trauma, but addiction. That ghost, we couldn't stop building houses over burial grounds. That demon, cocaine, heroin, and alcohol. That curse, well, addiction's going to be in your family for a long, long time. We've seen it in Poltergeist, Christine, The Beyond, The Hunger, Children of the Corn, Gremlins. I mean, what do you think the transformation from the Mogwai represents? The Lost Boys, Hellraiser, The Vanishing. Hell, there's even a vampire movie from 1995 called The Addiction. And addiction is front and center here in Ken Russell's trippy art house eye fuckery that is Altered States. William Hurt's marriage, career, and friendships all fall apart because of his addiction to science. In fact, the horror really isn't the altered state. It's his inability to recognize the harm he does when he's in that altered state. Addiction leads to two ends. One, a successful intervention and the promise of sobriety. In this case, you just have to love hard enough and put literal elbow grease into your hallway walls. Or two, death. These late 20th century horror films really loved looking into humanity through the eyes of we are monsters destroying ourselves unless we have the strength to control it. The trauma narrative of the 21st century examines our plight through the lens of the monster is destroying us from within. We are not the monster. It was placed there. But maybe we can understand what the monster really is. It's no mistake that Russell focuses specifically on psychedelic drug use as the instigator in this movie. It's a great villain, and it's also an incredible jumping off point for his bad trip visuals throughout. Flying snakes, titties made of sand, goat-headed Jesus. Awesome work, Ken. Hi, Cecil.
Hi, Jeffrey.
What is in, what's flying around or just behind you in the background of your bad trip green screen montage?
Oh my, bad trip green screen montage.
Uh-huh.
Candy wrappers,
Mm.
um, bats,
Uh-huh.
what else? Police lights, police sirens, um, large crowds of people,
Yes.
chanting probably,
Mm-hmm.
um, and fluttering wings, also related to bats. See also bats. Ibid.
Ibid. Oh, those are good ones. Police Sirens is a really good one. Like
Well, you
that's
know
real
my
bad
story,
trippy.
right? You know my story. I had a bad trip in college.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Tell
have I
it.
told you this?
Please tell it
So,
again.
so my freshman year of college, like literally, I mean, like talking like 3 months into my freshman year of college, I and some friends of mine, we tried mushrooms. I
Mm.
tried mushrooms for the first time. And my friends who had all done mushrooms before were like, it's going to be great. And we took a lot of mushrooms. And there was like 5 or 6 of us. And we had a friend that was supposed to be our babysitter. And our babysitter, not to name any names, but he has been on this show before.
Uh-huh.
He's a great guy, but maybe not the most like babysitter you'd want to choose.
Yeah.
So we start tripping, and our plan was to go to this like large event in the downtown of our college town, kind of like an assembly event. Why we thought that to go to this on mushrooms was a good idea, I don't know. But I made it only halfway.
Mm-hmm.
And in the crush of people, I got lost and got separated from the crowd, from the group. And I sort of laid down on the sidewalk because the stimulus was too much. Like I had too much stimulus going on. And the police arrested me for trespassing
Hmm.
because here was this like 19-year-old kid just like shaking and crying on the sidewalk. But because I didn't have any drugs on me and there's no public intoxication laws in Peoria, Illinois, they just took me to the drunk tank and sort of let me cool off. Until a few hours later, my friends were like, "Hey, where's Cecil? Oh no." And then they ended up calling all the hospitals and then eventually thought, "Hey, we should probably check the jails."
Uh-huh.
And they scraped together enough money. See, this is where they're good friends. They actually like got together the $95 to bail me out of jail. But the thing is, in my mind, I had died.
Yes.
And so I was standing in front of like St. Peter at the fucking pearly gate. So when the police were like questioning me who I am, like what is my job, what what's where do you live, blah blah blah, I thought that I had died and I was like having to recount like for my past life. And then I was sort of stuck in a sort of limbo in which I couldn't see anybody, but I could hear people talking in distant rooms. It sucked. It pretty much
Mhm.
sucked. Later, I was able to, slowly come back to hallucinogenic drugs, but it took me a long time.
I do like how your moment of your bad trip uh coincides with the bad trips in this movie, which is Christian religious imagery.
Oh, yeah.
It,
Well, what's crazy is that for the beginning part, and I don't know where this came from, but the beginning part before I got arrested, I thought that I would like the reason why it became this like sort of pseudo religious iconography is because I thought that I was regressing to a past life.
yeah.
And I completely saw, like very much saw, I was in a black church in the South and I was like up in a balcony and there was like a fan with like a black Madonna and child on it, like you would find in like a black church. And
Wow.
it was just, and I don't know if this is real.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if this is like if I made it into the theater for the assembly and if that's like part of the stimulus that my brain was receiving and then my brain filled in the rest. If I saw something that put that image into my brain, or if I've unlocked a past life, or
That's
all of the
amazing.
above.
Or all of the above. Uh, well, we have uh we have a movie that really captures that type of bad trippery.
Yeah,
Different imagery,
yeah,
but kind of related, right?
but
The
much more
the
Catholic.
much more Catholic, but getting to the primal human state, right? The primordial mushroom cream, the
Yeah.
primordial cream of mushroom soup that they
Oh
drink,
yeah.
that is trying to regress them to the earliest form of human. But
This
we're
movie
gonna,
is so wild. This movie's so wild because I don't think, I mean maybe, but I don't think that like the sort of people really knew about ayahuasca when this
mm-mm.
movie was made. But having done ayahuasca and like now watching this movie, I'm like, oh, y'all ain't even prepared. Like if you had kept going south a little bit farther and talked to like some people in Peru, Ken Russell, Patty Chayefsky, man, they would have fucking blown your mind. These mushrooms, they ain't shit. You want to try some ayahuasca, and then you'll be seeing like space lasers like you have never seen before.
This movie strikes me as aware of that as a thing, but only vaguely. Like there are
Sure.
places in Mexico where people do a thing
Yeah.
and it's trippy and it involves setting off that part of your brain
Yeah.
that causes these hallucinations, but like in a really like distant type of way that there is no like tourist industry built for it yet.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And
It's
also
it's
like
purely ceremonial. It's purely insular and ceremonial to these regional cultures. And only these like far-flung scientists, like grad students, PhD people are even remotely interested in this.
yes. And and you have to know somebody who knows someone in the tribe,
Yeah.
which is that's far reaching. And also, what's I gonna say? Also, oh, per your story about having a bad babysitter for your trip,
Hmm.
this tribe lacks babysitting. I'm not going to say they lack the babysitting skills. I'm going to say they lack the babysitting desire for this gringo.
Oh yeah. Oh no, they are blameless.
They are fully blameless.
They are blame like they're like this is a Tuesday night for
Yeah.
us because here's what you understand. Like when I was watching, this is actually like this ceremonial sequence is actually like not like seems kind of legit to me.
Uh-huh.
Like, but this is a culture that's like they've been doing this since time immemorial, and also people in this tribe have probably been doing this since they were adolescent. So
Yeah.
like in walks blonde-haired, blue-eyed William Hurt, who's like, "Yeah, give me the strongest shit you've got, baby." And then is like running around the fucking the rock,
Killing lizards.
killing lizards, and then angry. He's like, "No, they lied." Like I was like, You understand? You're the tourist here,
Yeah.
man."
Yeah.
And also, your friend should have been keeping an eye on you. Like I was actually more mad at the
Uh,
scientist friend. I was like, he should have been keeping an eye on you
right.
because
Yes.
it's not this tribe's responsibility to like once they give you the stuff, the whatever you see is on you, man.
Yeah.
That's your connection to the universe. And if you're out there killing lizards, maybe you're not the right person to be taking this these mushrooms or this medicine as the folks call it.
Yeah. Let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Edward Jessup, played by William Hurt. He is in a sensory deprivation tank at Columbia University. His science pal, Arthur, played by Bob Balaban.
Listen, any movie with Bob Balaban, I'm gonna like.
Uh-huh.
Like not like any movie with Bob Balaban. I'm going to enjoy it.
The whole idea here is that the movie is this movie was came out in 1980.
Yeah.
It opens in 1967. So
Yes.
they're Columbia professors, Arthur and Edward, and they had been doing some experiments on sensory deprivation tanks for on students, and they were getting some really interesting readings. And it got to the point where Edward was like, "I want to try this thing out because this looks fascinating to
Yeah.
me."
Makes
And
sense.
and so he starts using this sensory deprivation tank a lot. So one of the first things we learn is that like he was in this opening sequence, he was in there for 5 hours, and he says, "I hallucinated like a son of a bitch." And it's
Yeah.
like it's just Arthur said, "Yeah, I watched you start sobbing while you were in there." He's like, "Oh, that must have been when I was re-experiencing my father's death."
Oh, okay. That sounds fun.
Oh.
So fun. I think it's also funny. Like the next thing he says is, "You gotta try it." Which isn't that the thing of like anybody that goes through like one of these crazy like I'm gonna sit in a sweat lodge. I'm gonna eat a fucking fistful of mushrooms. I'm gonna like, have go through like one of these really intense things. They're like, oh my God, it was the worst night of my life. You've got to do it.
Yeah.
It'll change your life. You're like, you know, you can say no to that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's gotten
Although,
really into a thing.
yeah,
This is me with WNBA. I bought a single season ticket to the
yeah.
Liberty. I had the most fun this whole year, so I bought two for next year because I'm like, I need someone to come on
And
this trip
now
with
you've become
me.
a pusher.
I'm a
Now you become
pusher, Cecil. I'm like, I know a tribe in Mexico. They can get you
you're
blasted.
like, no, come on, come on, come on. It'll change your life. What's the Ellie? Ellie the elephant? No,
Yep.
what's their mascot?
Ellie. Yep.
Yeah, you're like, hey, once you start seeing the elephant, it's kicked in, man.
She's my shaman.
Yeah, that's it. Have you ever done a sensory deprivation tank before?
I have not. No.
I haven't either. I think I'd really like it. Like I like meditating, like I like when I do yoga and stuff like that. Like, I mean, sitting meditation is cool.
Hmm.
It's not like always my favorite thing, but I don't think meditation is like anybody's favorite thing just because it's hard.
One of the
But
th
but
Oh, oh, go
I
ahead.
think that like, I worked with a director once who like he would like part of his process is he would do like every week, he would do like an hour or two in the sensory deprivation tank. And that's how he would get ideas for his plays. And that's how he would get images and stuff like that. So, like to kind
Interesting.
of comb the depths of his psyche or subconscious.
One of the things that has always made me a little scared of the sensory deprivation tank, which I know you have full ability to get the fuck out of there if you want
Oh,
out of
of
there.
course.
They don't combine it with escape rooms.
No, it's oh
And
my God,
but
that's called waterboarding.
yeah, my friend Brad had told me about, I think it's up at RPI, uh, in up in the capital area of New York City. They have a fully soundproofed room.
Okay.
And so he was talking about it, they can go completely without light and without sound, and it deadens the sound
Yeah,
and the light so much that it works like sensory deprivation.
sure.
And he said
Absolutely.
it's so horrifying because when you're alone in there, you can hear your heartbeat and it
Oh,
gets
absolutely.
really
Yeah.
loud. Like you
Yeah.
hear it. You hear your body functioning, you hear your lungs, and that started horrifying me,
And
which I
that
know is maybe the
already you're like,
point.
even you describing this to me is freaking you out. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You know, when I was a kid, I would go on like Boy Scout camping trips, and we would do spelunking every once in a while. And when you're in like really low depth caves in like that level of
Mm,
zero light, it's freaky. Like
yeah.
that like that absence of light, freaky enough.
Well, I'm gonna stick with Ken Russell films. Maybe
Okay,
I'll
great,
rewatch Tommy this week.
great.
Okay, so now Edward is gonna meet Emily. It's at the faculty party. The incredible Blair Brown.
Oh my God, she's so good in this.
She's so good. I love actors who have these long-ranging careers and kind of go through their different eras,
Yeah.
right? So she's so perfect as the it's not quite ingenue, but like a beautiful young girlfriend, but also like science model sort of thing. Like she's a model. She's gorgeous.
Yeah, she's gorgeous, but she's also she can talk the talk, all the
Yep.
sciencey wiancy talk. And then also like some of the emotional range that she has to go to in this
Yeah.
movie is crazy to me.
It's really crazy. And so she plays this wide range. And then this is so silly, but my first recognition of Blair Brown was from the TV show Fringe.
Oh, I never
And
watched Fringe,
and
but I did
she's
see Orange is the New Black.
oh, I've never seen that. So I don't know her from that. I know in Fringe she plays kind of a like a person who is like completely walled off
Oh,
emotionally because
oh, interesting.
she's within this corporation. I forget all the names
Okay.
of it. It's been a hot minute since that show was on the air, but like there's part of her you're like, "Oh my God, she's the wizard," right? Like
Yeah.
she is kind of like the inner functioning of things and there's something really terrifying about her, but also kind and welcoming, kind of like a CEO type of
Okay, sure,
person.
sure, sure, sure.
And but I love that transformation of like she has all I'm saying is she has incredible range.
Oh, yeah. And also I found out that she was I think the original production of Copenhagen
Oh,
on
okay.
Broadway, which I love that
Wow.
play.
I think a lot of her career was stage work. And I think
Yeah.
this may not have been
This
her first film, but
this feels, I mean, this feels very much like theater, like New York theater actors in
yes.
film. Even though like Bob Balaban, and I think this is William Hurt's actually first movie, but he's again like very theater roots kind of acting required here.
And it's Patty Chayefsky, who
Yeah.
is famous playwright, and screenwriter as well.
Although apparently doing the research on this movie, the director and the writer hated each other,
Mm.
hated each other. And so they would like Ken Russell was like not allowed to change any of the words. So he was like, okay, fine. I'm just gonna have the actors scream all the words at each other so you can't hear anything. And you could
Wow.
tell because there's quite a few scenes in this movie where I was like, what the fuck are these motherfuckers saying? They're just like talking like I don't mind a little bit of like was it Kenneth Lonergan like talking over each other naturalistic kind of
Yeah.
shit, but this was like minutes of actors just screaming on top of sometimes 3 to 4 actors screaming on top of each other. And
I
now I
know
understand it was like a power play.
That's so interesting because I noticed in this, I've seen this in other movies, but so I watched this on Prime,
Okay.
Amazon Prime,
Same,
and
same.
I always have captions on when I watch
Oh,
movies.
gotcha. Okay, smart.
And one of the things about the captions on Amazon Prime in this movie, I don't know if it's the same in the other streaming services, but they don't always match what's being said. And it's not to say the gist of what's being said and what is written at the bottom of the screen are identical. It never is like, I love you, and then it says I hate you at the bottom. Like it's
Okay,
never like
sure.
off, but it is not verbatim what is
Okay.
happening.
So it maybe drops a few of the words.
It gives me the sense that what happens is the screenplay is given to the captioners,
Gotcha.
and the actors have improvised a thing.
Okay.
So, whereas a movie like Creep, the
Hmm.
words and the scene matched up perfectly, probably because there was no screenplay to hand them, because the
Yeah.
screenplay is a
Whatever they
transcript
said.
of what they
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
And most movies, you are going to have a situation where you read the words as written.
Yeah.
And anyway, so this is a movie that makes total sense why people went off and created this kind of like crazy overlapping dynamic, probably a lot of improvised dynamic as well. Well, he meets Emily. It's a lot of flirting. They're both whiz kids. They both are like
Yeah.
whatever. And Edward is kind of talking to her. She's, oh, by the way, she's an anthropologist, which is important.
Yes.
Also, and on a she is on the same level of him as a scientist. In fact, she got her PhD a year earlier than
I know. I
him.
love that. She's like, I'm a whiz kid too. Ha ha. Ha.
Edward kind of posits his thing that madness might just be another level of consciousness.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay. And then
Noted.
this I started laughing, and it's not because this is a bad scene, but it's so much to take in, which is their sex scene.
Yeah. Welcome to a Ken Russell film, man.
Uh-huh. Because they're fucking, and he is like staring into this like circular electric heater. And she's like, "What are you looking at?" What are you thinking about? He's like, "God, Jesus, crucifixions." I'm like, while you're orgasming,
Get out of me.
mm-hmm,
Or do we have to incorporate this into our bedroom play? I
right.
love I think this is really funny.
I do
Like
too.
this kind of weird motif of their sex like welcome to a Ken Russell film where
Mm-hmm.
sex and religion intersect.
And he then like he climbs off of her and immediately is like, "I gave up on God when my dad died." I'm like, okay, wow. Red flags not invented until the 1990s,
No,
as we've
absolutely not.
established on this show. So poor Emily here is like, "Oh, well, you're gonna have to
Oh,
tell me about that." Um,
I
I
mean, don't
was,
you think he's like in one respect, sure, but
uh-huh,
in another respect, like he's opening up to her. He's
totally.
telling, you know, this is like, and I think he even says he's like, I've not talked about this in years. He actually says, I've not talked about this to anybody in 10 years. And my first thought was, who was the last person you told about this? Seriously, I
Yeah,
want to know who you told this story to last,
right.
because I guarantee it was not in this situation of like post coitus first date ness.
There is something about the 80s that I think it's so interesting. I'm so fascinated doing this show with you, Cecil, because over the 4.5 or so years that we've been doing this show, I start getting a sense for all of these movies being of a time.
Oh yeah,
And I think very early on, you kind of set that up as an idea, and I've been framing all of these stories as like part of a time. And you're right. I think him opening up to her in the way he does it here feels a little laughable for 2024. But I think when
sure.
we're talking 1980, we are not far removed. Like the end of Mad Men, Don
Oh yeah,
Draper's arc ends in the early 70s. We are
yeah.
not far removed from Don Draper as kind of male
The
archetype.
walled man. Yeah,
Yeah. And getting into this very like inattentive but sensitive, emotional man. And the fact that he even tells how he felt when his father died
The fact
is a
that he even
huge thing.
talks about his father, yeah, talks
Yes.
about his like his past is should be a good thing,
Yeah.
right? He's sharing with her. I mean, what he's sharing is like, I was like, okay, so you literally saw visions of Jesus and the crucifixion and saints. Okay, all right, Joan of Arc, sure,
Hmm.
have at it. And she asked a really interesting question, which is, were your parents religious? And he says, no, not at all. Okay, so you were just kind of that kid. You were just kind of you were had a proclivity to organized religion. She's like, well, how did you end up being a scientist here in fucking Colombia then? Well, my dad died of cancer. And that night, he said, like, my dad's last words were terrible.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I realized that the human existence, the human experience from beginning to end is terrible. And I said, religion, fuck off.
Yeah.
Ever since. Now, to me, the red flag is not that he's sharing the story with her in this very intense kind of story. To me, it's like, oh, so you're literally Mr. Hot and Cold.
That's it. That's totally
You're
it.
literally like, okay, you're having religious ecstasies one minute, and then the next day your father dies, and you're like, God is dead. I guess. I mean, you're a teenager. You went through a lot of trauma
Hmm.
of your father dying, but I think you're going to be Mr. Hot and Cold throughout the rest of this movie.
That yes, I think that's incredible. And I had the thing of like, yeah, I don't think it's what he's sharing. Because I definitely have been on dates wherein I can tell early on that like we're just gonna keep this shit light. But
Yeah,
I've had
yeah.
other
Oh,
dates where
sure.
like
You get real
we're,
deep really
we're like
quick and it
four and a
feels
half hours
good.
in and we're still
Yeah.
hanging around with a couple of nursing a couple of beers, being like, yeah. And then so when I stopped talking to my father, it was
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
we're both like back and forth. And but there's a give and take, and at no point in this movie
That's so correct.
does he ever like think about how what I have to say relates to what you have to say or what you need, or everything is like in service of his own quest.
He's always lecturing.
Yes.
He is constantly, I mean, maybe this is because we're in a Patty Chayefsky joint, but he's literally constantly lecturing.
Yeah.
I love it. Like later towards the end, there's a moment where she says, I love you. And like anticipating him to say, I love you too. And he goes, I literally thought he was going to say, I love science.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what he says.
That was the subtext of what he said. Yeah. I mean, this movie is playing with the idea that she says "I love you" a couple times to him, and he
Yeah.
never says it back. And he
He
always
doesn't
actually,
even,
he even like at one point early questions like what love even is. Like I can't even fathom how to process what you mean by that. And I'm like, okay, dude, all
all
right.
right. You must be a blast around St. Valentine's Day.
Oh my God. He also okay. So let's talk about there. So we're gonna kind of the movie sort of fast forwards up to present day 1980, but he and Emily both get work at Harvard University. And this is still kind of in the late 60s here. He's still doing his studies, but she's also got a job at Harvard. He's got a job at Harvard. It's going to be great. We can both go
Yeah,
to
makes
Harvard.
sense.
We should get married. And she's like, I know you're a madman. Even sex is a mystical experience for you.
Sure.
And his statement is like, he's like, okay, I'll marry you because that's what you want. I'm really not comfortable around women, but you're the best I'll ever find.
You know what people love to hear? And I'm not like, irregardless of gender,
Uh-huh.
you're the best you're the best that's ever going to come along.
Hmm.
So I might as well catch you up now.
Might as well is the,
Bargain bin.
when they say,
Might as well. I mean,
do
I
you,
guess why
Cecil,
not?
take this
If
man as your husband? Might as well.
might as
It's
well. If
it's
not now, when? It's crazy. I also love like this is why I love Ken. I gotta say honestly, I mean this is how fucked up I am, and this tells you about my trajectory as a human being. But like Ken Russell is probably like one of my favorite filmmakers,
Hmm.
and I think one of the reasons why I love film so much. So like these conversations we're talking about, interesting. But
Uh-huh.
what's going on in the background
Yes,
while they're having these
this girl,
relationship talks
this
about
fucking
like, okay,
girl.
so like I'll be doing my assistantship and you'll be doing this. There's a schizophrenic woman, like
Uh-huh.
highly paranoid schizophrenic woman with like diodes and dials and shit. And they dosed her with LSD and they're like watching her trip out in her chair. So it's like this is why I love this like juxtaposition of like even the romantic shit is in this very like clinical, dangerous, like it is the time and the place where they're having these. It's not in a coffee shop. This is not when Harry met Sally. This is when Harry dosed Sally with LSD.
Yeah, that girl and that schizophrenic girl,
Oh
she
my
says,
God.
"My heart is being touched by Christ." Like, oh my God, I'll have what she's
Fun.
having.
Absolutely. It's the original meet cute. Oh my
God,
God.
it's so good.
I love the time jump here. So then it's like next shot, we see Emily kind of hanging out of a window, and it's like 7 years later.
Yeah.
They have a kid.
Hmm.
They have two kids. And it takes you a minute to realize this, but it's like they've gone off to Harvard. I
Yeah.
also want to point out, I think it's really funny that last week we had like the dumbest college spring break movie
Yeah.
and we didn't roll college university. And then this week we actually had college university on the dice, and we have like arguably like one of the smartest college university horror movies. I'm just applauding our balance in that.
Yeah. I think that's really fun. I love it when we have these movies that have that connection, that compare contrast. And this is a smart, self-aware college movie because it is about the smartest people you could possibly
Yeah.
know, but also people who live in the hell that is academia.
I was gonna say this is about academic bubbles for sure.
Yeah. And I also really love the different models of, particularly with these three men,
Yes.
because they mostly, Emily is also in the university, but like Emily's arc doesn't really touch on the politics of it. But
Sure.
Arthur, Mason, who
Yeah.
we'll meet in a second, and Edward, those three guys, definitely there is a triangle of politics and academia that
You're
is
like, hey, you
so
want to get into
fascinating.
higher education? Pick your fighter. Choose your
Yes.
fighter.
Yep. So Arthur and his wife Sylvia come up to Boston to meet Edward and Emily, and also Mason is there too, but they're going to have dinner at Edward and Emily's place. I love this scene. Sylvia doesn't get enough screen time, Arthur's wife,
Oh my God, she's amazing.
but in the bedroom that Arthur and Sylvia are staying in, like there's just shit everywhere. Like there's like clothes on the
Yeah.
bed,
It's
and
like it's like she took their suitcase and just dumped it out on the bed.
yeah, and the whole thing is just a mess. And Sylvia comes in. Arthur's like, this place is a dump. She's like, they're getting a divorce. How do you know that? I was just talking to her. She's still crazy about him, but he's still crazy.
They're kvetching. I
They're
mean, this is
totally
like
kvetching.
which is like against the sort of like blonde hair, blue-eyed cream cheese Jesus that is William Hurt, like
Hmm.
Bob Balaban, like they're the kind of like Jewish, like like sciency nerd.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my gosh, have you heard? It's a little more. I love it. Absolutely like that's much more akin to my heart.
Yes.
They're like, oh my God, did you hear they're getting a divorce? I heard they were doing okay. I don't know. This is that she just told me 5 minutes ago. Go talk to him. Go, 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 go. I love you. Goodbye.
Perfect.
Tell me everything you find.
This is when Arthur goes to talk to Edward, to Eddie, this is where Eddie is like, I don't, Arthur says, she really loves you. And he says, I
Yeah.
don't even really know what love is. And he says something that I found sort of interesting. I wrote it down. He says, Emily, it prefers to think about the pain that we inflict on each other. But
Yes.
like, what about the pain we inflict on ourselves? And like, he's just thinking about like what is within me rather than like
Yeah.
how do I relate to the world is the
Yeah.
difference between these two.
Yeah. And he says, like, I'm much more comfortable just being like a monk in a cell, driving myself nuts with the human experience rather than driving another person nuts
Yeah.
with the co-shared experience.
Yes. Even at the bar later, they're like, Edward is so annoying about his like lecturing about religion, like correcting people on what the
Oh,
Buddhists
yeah.
believe and yada yada yada. The meaning he says the meaningless horror of life at one point in time. And I'm like, we are at a bar, sir.
Right?
We are old friends who haven't
You're
seen
like at
each
an
other.
Italian restaurant right
Yeah.
now.
Amazing. But at this, he meets, found this so interesting, the name of this character. He meets Eduardo.
Yeah.
So Edward and Eduardo, which can't be a
Oh, okay.
mistake.
Okay. Okay, sure.
Yeah. Screenwriting, you're very particular about like
Yeah.
even having two
Name
characters with the
choice?
first letter of their
Yeah, yeah,
names.
yeah, yeah.
So Edward and so so Edward and Eduardo here, we start talking about these Hinchi tribes in Mexico, or the Hinchi tribe, sorry, in Mexico. And so next thing we know, fucking road trip.
They're off to Mexico, man.
Yep.
So this movie, if I have a I mean, this movie has a lot of flaws.
Yes.
Let's be honest here. And I think the part of it is that it's very disjointed.
Hmm.
Like, and in the beginning, I'm kind of into it. So it's like chapter one, end.
Yes.
Chapter two, the trip.
Yeah.
And I think chapter two is probably one of my favorites, just because it's the most like crazy visual psychedelic. It's also like the most interesting to me, and I don't know, I just think it's really like fascinating because we've now learned about our main character a little bit. So like the imagery that Ken Russell pulls together in this psychedelic trip is a little bit less about lights and flashes and more about setting up what's going on in his subconscious.
Hmm.
And it's also a little less Jesus-y, which
Yes.
like, because after he told the story about his father dying, he kept having these hallucinations about super Jesus,
Hmm.
like Shroud of Turin bursting into flames, multi-eyed goat,
Yes.
Jesus,
Hmm.
the blood of Christ on the book of Revelations kind of shit. And this is a little more interesting to me. This
Yeah.
like more this what we're about ready to get into.
Well, we get Eduardo's explanation of they talk about like this thing that they refer to as they call it the first flower. It is a primordial plant. It is not, it is a mushroom,
Yeah.
and it's a whole stew and a whole ceremony.
It's like a melange.
Yeah.
It's a couple different things. Mostly it's going to try and kill you.
Hmm.
Like I couldn't hear a lot of what they said, but I heard I pegged the word belladonna. So toxin levels pretty high. So you
Yep.
can only take a little tiny bit.
So we've got the brujo, who is the witch, the head, the
Yeah.
shaman guy, and he tells through Eduardo translating that your soul will return to the first soul of your unborn self.
Cute.
You'll see a you'll be propelled into the void, you'll see a spot, then a crack.
Okay.
The crack is what is it's the crack into nothing, and from
Oh,
there comes your unborn soul. And this shot of them entering this cave, this
yeah.
beautiful horizontal crack in the cave ceiling here as they enter from brightly backlit. Gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
It's that. It's also the music they're playing. It's
Hmm.
which there's actual people like in the tribe playing the music that you're listening to, and it's like shofar horns. Like
Uh-huh.
it's this crazy. The soundtrack to this film is unbelievably good.
Yeah,
But this is wild to me. I think that probably the music and the visuals are why this sequence is like one of my favorites.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we get at one point the Brujo cuts Edward's finger like between his fingers and then like grabs his hand and holds it over the pot. We got to get
Mhm.
human blood into this pot. And each tribe member takes a drink from the ladle, and then it's time for Edward to go. He is the last. And he does. And then fireworks go off outside.
Uh-oh. Well, that's weird. Who's
That's
setting off
weird.
those fireworks?
And these are so interesting too because these fireworks feel very real. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
no.
Like it's
Like you can tell that William Hurt is like in the shot with these fireworks.
he's
Yeah.
diving between sparks. Like they
Yeah.
look present on the screen, these sparks coming down on him. We get shots of creepy cave drawings. It cuts to him and Emily in like this yellow washed like garden, and they're like in 1910s
Yeah. Kind of
English. Yeah.
Victorian, which again, very Ken Russell. Because Ken Russell did like a lot of these sort of like psychedelic, you know, The Who's Tommy,
Hmm.
Lair of the White Worm, but he also did a lot of like D.H. Lawrence films.
Yeah, Women in Love
So,
was one of his first big ones.
so like he loves that like the brewing of the sexuality under the surface kind of
Uh-huh.
shit.
Yeah. And yeah, there's a snake on his face, a mushroom cloud, there's a monitor lizard which turns into a naked Emily.
I love it. She's just doing like she's doing her yoga.
Uh-huh.
She's literally just doing her Sphinx pose.
Yep. And then there's a dust storm. This is so again gorgeous.
This is
Gorgeous, gorgeous,
unbelievable.
gorgeous. There's a dust storm, so there's a heavy wind and like dust blowing past them, and you see both of them kind of slowly turn into dust themselves and then blow away. It's a very long sequence and it's beautiful to watch.
Now, I have to say, like, as someone who has had my share of hallucinogenic drugs, in a way, this sequence of the dust, is actually weirdly one of the closest feelings of doing a lot of hallucinogenic drugs, of that feeling of like you've left whatever, when they talk about ego death, of the thing that makes you you, you
Hmm.
leave that behind and you join the sort of greater consciousness, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what that feels like. Of like the body is just like the whole ashes to ashes, dust to dust thing. And when you people talk about having a religious experience on hallucinogenic drugs, this is like a visual representation of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know, brilliant that this
Hmm.
is included in this film.
The next morning, it immediately cuts to a shot of that lizard monitor completely cut open with guts spilling. It's so gross.
Uh-oh.
Um, and
The
then
tribe does not look happy.
no, and they're kicked out because they claim he killed the lizard, and he's like, "What?" To Edward's point, he does suggest, Eduardo, you should have been watching me.
Yeah,
I mean, you're the sober
yeah,
one here.
yeah,
And Eduardo's like, "Yeah, you just went out of the cave and we heard screams, and the next thing we know, this lizard said," I'm like, why not? Well, if you watch me walk out of cave screaming, I would like
yeah,
for you to follow me and just keep
yeah,
an eye on me to make sure like I don't like leap off a cliff.
yeah, for real. Again, have a sober babysitter.
Yeah.
Like that time when I did all that ayahuasca, you literally have someone who is like watching over you, and there's like safety checks in place.
Yeah.
So that way, if you, I don't know, have to use the bathroom, you don't walk off the edge of a cliff because you don't, who knows what's going on in your brain. But they're like, okay, come on. Like they're literally like guiding you to the toilet to be like, okay, here we go, Grandpa. Okay, are y'all done? Back to your trippy seat. There you go. Have a nice trip.
You need a designated driver is essentially it.
Absolutely.
The thing that makes this made me so crazy too, because we also learn that Edward asked the Brujo for some of that mixture to take back to Boston to analyze or maybe even synthesize. I'm like, what a dick move. One, they hate you, which apparently they gave him that mixture.
Yeah,
But
sure.
but two, like I'm not even going to get into like co-opting a culture, appropriation, like
Sure, sure, sure.
strip mining a culture, but there is something to separating the spiritual from the scientific here,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And and so if you talk about something like Chinese or Eastern medicine, right?
Yeah.
That in a lot of cases there is a ritual and a practice to it. Now you can remove all of that and you can just take the supplements. You could just get acupuncture placed
Yeah.
scientifically in the right location, whatever. Sure, there is some science to it, but there's also a root to what you just witnessed, Edward, was a very centuries old ceremony
Yeah.
that you're just like, oh yeah, the ceremony's dumb. I just need the juice. Just give
Right.
me the juice.
Just give me the juice. Just give me the stuff that causes the effect. That's the thing. And that's why I think like why the hippies got it wrong in the 60s and like why a lot of like it's taken this long for a lot of hallucinogenic culture to catch up to
Hmm.
is that the ritual of taking these drugs is almost as important as the drug itself. Because the ritual is what puts you in the mindset that sets you off on the journey. So
Yes.
if you're in your cousin's dingy ass basement ripping bong hits playing, fucking Mario Kart and then you're like, I don't know, let's eat a fistful of mushrooms. How's your trip going to be? It might
Right.
be good, might not be. But if you're in like a curated space that's like you've sat and meditated and you're like there's fucking music going on in the background and you're in nature, like it's a very different thing.
Yeah. If you get abandoned by your friends and then picked up by the police and thrown into a drunk
Yeah.
tank,
Yeah.
it's not going to be a good trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they get back to the university, and Edward and Arthur are doing these tests, and Mason is there. And Mason is not hippy dippy. Like
No.
Arthur's got a very hippy dippy sort of look to him. Um, but Mason he is all institutional. He's
He's
not
all
a bad guy.
institutional.
He's
And no, no, no. He's
no.
all institutional and he's also like has a much more medical background.
Yes.
So you get this feeling of like life and death are very serious to him. Like, it's a little less about numbers and it's more about, like what are you putting into your body that like how many cc's, like how much of this shit have you put into your body? What does it do?
Yes. And this is where Edward stops being a scientist and is very clearly on a irreversible course towards
Yes.
self-destruction because he does not want to do testing practices. Like he
Trials.
does
Yeah.
not want to do trials. He does not want the time it would take to do a sample of this drug and do research on it and a write up on this and do animal testing first before human
He's a
testing.
he's addicted to self-discovery.
He is. And he's using he's using Harvard's resources. He's abusing them to get to his own truth. Because he is trying in the 21st century, like I think this film 40 years later is about his father dying and what that fucked him up, how that
Sure.
really
Yeah.
fucked him up. But here we're dealing with strictly the addiction. He cannot stop himself. Even when Arthur says things like he tells Mason, Edward blacks out for hours and doesn't remember a thing he says to me.
Yeah.
Um, I like this. This is a very stagey theater conversation because Arthur and Mason are sitting side by side facing the camera because they're looking at Edward in this makeshift sensory deprivation room. And Mason's like, I want you to put a stop to it. Arthur says, why do you think I called you? You
Yeah.
try to stop him.
Yeah. He's runaway train now.
Yep.
We've given him like you thought he was bad with that sensory deprivation tank back in Colombia. Now he's like a runaway fucking train. Now he's got the Mexican mushroom juice.
Yeah. I love Mason in this movie. I love just how aggressive he is verbally. Like
Yeah.
he is like, you do your own shit at your own risk, you dumbass. He's got this like
Yeah. Yeah.
weird
Yeah.
southern accent I can't quite place.
It's like
Uh,
it's very like Kentucky,
yeah. Okay.
like like very like he goes red faced very easily, and he's clearly set up as the antagonist to Eddie. He's
Yes.
all rules and regs.
He's Walter Peck from the Ghostbusters, but
Yes,
more
yes,
likable, right?
yeah.
Um, but they keep going. He's hallucinating. He starts in this while on this first flower, this primordial mushroom juice that he got from Mexico. He starts now hallucinating. He's describing it, a savanna, smoking mountains beyond, and the birth of man, the first and truly human form. It's got a chunk of lava in its hands.
Oh,
They're
cute.
hunting.
Okay.
Oh, I am becoming one of them.
Oh,
I'm no
I'm no
longer
longer
observing.
watching. I'm now, yeah.
I'm
Oh,
killing.
oh, what?
I'm eating
What? Huh?
the flesh of a goat.
What the fuck?
They're in this brand like classic like flatbed in sensory deprivation tank now. This
This is amazing to me because
Mhm.
when the sensory deprivation tank is literally the first thing we see, like first shot of the film,
Yes.
but it's this kind of like diving bell contraption that is
Right.
vertical. You're upstanding. It's you can see the person's face, and
Hmm.
it has this aquatic theme to it.
Yes.
So in the beginning, what's established as this like sensory deprivation is seen as almost like in a like embryonic fluid, ethereal. Like there's even one thing where like Eddie is like his hair's all blown around and there's like fish and eels swimming around and it feels very like ethereal.
Yeah.
The sensory deprivation tank at Harvard is jet black. You cannot see inside, you cannot see out of it. And it's like much more squat.
Yes.
Like it's just the difference, like the psychological difference, even though they achieve the same effect. One is upstanding, the other is like hunched over. Like it's just one is very open, the other is a fucking mystery as to what is going on in there.
Well, the vertical one in Colombia was very much the erect man,
Yeah,
and the one in Harvard where you were laying down is a womb,
yeah,
your baby in womb.
yeah.
And so those are the two things. Those are the two places you are.
Have fun.
Uh-huh. But Mason, when Edward is telling this whole story, Mason's like, he just sounds like he's having a bad trip. So he
Yeah.
runs over there, opens the door. It's been 4 hours, by the way.
Oh, they
And
also hear some like hooting and
oh,
screaming,
yes, there's a crazy sounding grunt that happens that
and they're like,
doesn't
we got to
sound
get him out. Yeah.
human.
Unhuman sound.
And they open the tank, and Edward is floating in there with he has got blood all over his mouth.
And what's interesting is that he's floating in like a salt solution, right?
Uh-huh.
So that way he can float. And he's got white all over his face
Yes.
from the salt, which looks like the white on the face from the
The Hinchi
ritual.
tribe. Yeah.
Yep. Just a little put that bit out there.
Yeah.
But where did this blood come from, Jeffrey?
Well, it's really interesting because when they drag him out of this tank and take all the wires and shit off of him and wipe his mouth, Mason wipes the blood off his mouth with the rag, and Edward's not able to communicate. He's kind of like,
Can't talk.
oh,
Yeah.
so he has to start writing things down. And he says he wants a blood test immediately before he quote reconstitutes.
Oh my God.
And he says there's been a time-space fallout from the hallucination.
Oh,
And Mason is like, Mason gets
fuck all
so
this shit.
mad about this.
Yeah,
And
he's like, fuck every inch of this.
he's like, fine, you fuckwit. Fine, I will do an examination and an x-ray on you. Let's go fucking now. Let's go fucking do it. You fuck. Like, he's so good.
He's so mad. I think and then he takes the rag with the blood. And I think it's
Yes.
really like, this is so fascinating to me. And he burns it.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to know.
He doesn't want to know because
No.
he's a man of science. And clearly, if that was somehow
Hmm.
goat blood, if that was somehow goat blood, on that rag, that would topsy-turvy his whole fucking deal.
I'm so glad you mentioned the incinerator scene when he burns that rag because those are two men, Mason and Edward, who are such skilled and talented scientific men and academics, but it shows in their two ways how little interest they have in science as a process, which that's what science is a
Right?
process.
Yeah.
Science is not a belief system. It is
Yeah.
not a dogma. It is a process. And Mason Mason wants science to hold together the world as he knows it.
Yeah.
And Edward wants science to rip
Bust
apart
open the
the
world
world
as
as he
yeah,
knows
like
it.
he wants, and I think, and I love like Bob Balaban Arthur as like the fulcrum who's just like, I'm just here taking notes.
I'm just here so I don't get fined. I'm here to do a job.
Well, he's the
Yeah,
he's the scribe. He's the
yeah,
one who's like, I'm the one who's going to sit here for 5 hours.
yeah,
I have no opinions. My only thing is to observe everything.
yeah. Well, another person there to observe everything is a very
John
brief,
Larroquette.
brief appearance by John Larroquette as the X-ray tech.
Love it. The overworked
Yeah,
X-ray technician.
so good. Well, they do the X-rays, and Edward finally has his voice back, and he is pointing at the X-rays of his kind of like of his throat area, and he's like, "Look, that is a regression of the thyroid. Like that is quasi-simian right there. Like that is proof of regression." Mason's like, "I just don't fucking fuck," and then so
Yeah,
he
what you
goes.
you don't know anything about X-rays.
And he's like, I'm the head of endocrinology at Harvard. Don't fucking lecture me about this shit. But he's like, you know what? Fine. I'm not a radiologist, so I will go to the head of radiology right now.
Mhm.
And he goes to the head of radiologist and thrusts these things. And the guy's like, what am I looking for? And he's like, are these abnormal? And what does that guy say, Cecil?
This dude's a gorilla. Your guy's a gorilla.
So
Oh,
good.
proof positive.
Okay, this fucking scene. So we know, by the way, in Edward's personal life, Emily has gone off to Africa.
Yes, she's studying baboons.
She's studying baboons she's flown
She's
off to
taking the
Nairobi.
kids.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
good. She's
they
off on her
are
journey.
they're not officially divorced. They are just separated. So that's a thing that we know. They are separated anyways. So Edward wakes up at home in bed to a very young woman. And
Yep.
listen, William Hurt is probably like 30 in this movie.
Oh yeah.
This woman looks early 20s. So you're like,
Yeah.
whatever, that makes
Yeah.
sense. But she's like, are you okay, Dr. Jessup?
The fact that she calls him Dr. Jessup
I
is
was like, oh
so
no.
bleh.
Oh.
Dr. Jessup. And he's all like, I'm fine. I'm fine. Sir, you are not fine.
Because
Your
you
skin is bubbling. You've got the bubble skin.
these effects are really good.
It's when we talk about like, I miss the days of practical effects, this is the shit we're talking about.
These are so good.
Because it's like watching, okay, so it's like he's lying in bed and he's like, ow, my tummy. And then he pulls the covers down and literally he's like, chest and belly are rippling.
Yeah.
And what's cool about it is that you're actually watching like William Hurt reacting to something that's attached to his body.
Yes.
And then he's like, he pulls his arm up and his arm, like, how to
He's got
describe
Popeye
this?
arm.
He's got Popeye arm. It's like someone took all the skin and like pushed the skin down the arm, but like left the muscles in place.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy,
Yeah.
but it's really cool to watch.
It's so cool.
And then it kind of disappears, and he's like fumbling into the bathroom, and then he gets into the shower and he's trying to
Uh-huh.
shower off, and then he looks down his feet and he has six simian toes on. He has like 12
He like
toes.
opposable thumbs are
Yeah, like extra
11 to
opposable
12.
thumbs
Yeah.
on his feet, and then those are gone. And then, are you okay, Dr. Jessup? Dr. Jessup, you all right? And he's like, I'm fine. I need to take notes because science is his only mistress.
Yep. Well, it's after the scene when Emily and the kids return home from the trip to Nairobi. And she has been talking to Mason, who has told him about him taking this drug and that he's having this genetic regression.
Yeah.
And
I
she's
love that
like,
like he wrote her a letter and I was like, again, my empathetic says like, can you imagine being her? She's like in fucking Nairobi. She's like, hey, we need to talk about your husband.
oh my
Um,
God.
he took this crazy drug from Mexico and he's convinced that he has regressed back to a primeval simian state. You need to come back and talk some sense into your husband.
Yeah. Yeah, Mason is like, I think he might have like leukemia or lymphoma and he
Yeah.
won't see a real doctor.
And he's also like having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah. And Edward gets super angry at
Oh, yeah.
Emily about for her talking to Mason about this. He's not really, I mean, he kind of says like fuck Mason, but he's like taking all of his rage out on Emily.
Oh my God, he's
Uh
so angry at her. Like, this is the first day she's back. She's literally like unpacking crates, getting back from Africa. And he's like scream lecturing at her about his discovery of his primeval state on this drug. And she's like, you could like, and she has a fucking kid who is Drew Barrymore,
yes,
by the
yep.
way.
Uh-huh.
This dude is not cut out to be a father. You had a kid with this guy?
He's not cut out to be a partner even
No.
like because she also starts telling him about what she was studying. He's like, no, going on in his thing
Blah blah blah. I don't
until
care. Oh,
she
wait, they're about groups
baboons.
of
Did you get recordings of baboons?
I would be very interested to hear those recordings. Yeah, I guess so. They're in some crate around here. Maybe you could, I don't know, help me unpack.
Yeah. Or like, why don't you just take a breather? Let's go to dinner. Let's
Yeah.
just get caught up. Why don't you hug your daughter? He never once touches this
Oh
child.
no. Oh no, absolutely not.
So he wants to get back in the tank to repeat the experiment. And uh she is like, just need you to just consider that you
Yeah,
might be
just
doing harm to yourself. And he's like, I'm tired of everyone patronizing me.
he's like, I've been tested and poked and prodded for the last 3 months. I'm out of here, man. And he runs away. And next shot, mushroom juice,
Yep.
EKG meter, and he's
Yeah.
closing that tank, and he's all by himself.
Yeah, this is the true, like you've gone full addiction because now
No
nobody in
guide
your
rails.
life will even tolerate you doing the thing.
Yep.
So now
No guide rails.
you've got to
Like this,
sneak
you can't
off and
even
do it.
pretend it's science anymore.
No.
You know? This sequence, pound for pound, because okay, let's be honest here. We're watching this movie, and I'm like, yes, this movie is so fucking cool. I'm really enjoying it. Oh my gosh, psychedelic drugs, 80s effects, awesome. It's not really that scary. And
No.
then
Uh-huh.
Act Three.
This
This
is
sequence had me on the edge of my seat, Jeffrey.
see, he's in the tank. Meanwhile, like back at the house, like they don't know where he is.
He
Like
just disappeared.
yeah, he just ran off. Mason has called Emily and he's like, I think you're right. I think he's on the verge of a breakdown. But then we cut back to this tank, this deprivation tank. The door opens from the inside, and the hand that opens it is not beautiful William Hurt's manicured paws. It is the primal hand of primal man,
You
all
got monkey
knuckled and
hand.
hairy. Yeah,
You
you
got
got
that monkey
monkey
hand.
hand.
You
Yep.
got that monkey paw.
It's like tennis elbow, but it's monkey hand.
No, you got that monkey paw.
And the custodian hears something.
Oh, fuck me. This is so scary.
This is really, really tense. This is I will I will agree with you that I think this is scary until we start getting like full shots of the
Oh,
monkey.
it's not okay. What makes this scary is like it's yeah, you're right. It's scary for like 5 minutes because what they do is they tease out this effect. Like it's clearly a dude in a like not a monkey suit, but like a Neanderthal suit, kind of hair suit,
Here
and
suit. Yeah.
suit. So
Yeah.
it's not quite monkey. It's something in between, and he's not doing like monkey movements or gorilla movements. It's really the sound effects
It's
that are
that and
like screams,
yeah.
like 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 primate screams. It's also the lighting.
Uh,
So they're in the basement of this Harvard building, right? And we all know like basements, like Freddy's basement, a lot of pipes.
yeah.
And the way they've lit it is like through the pipes and it's all kind of like steamy. So everything is like shattered spotlights on everything.
Yeah.
The lighting and so you don't actually see the primal man's face for like the first 5 to 7 minutes. It's always backlit and it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, it really is. The scene in the boiler room when he climbs up into the thing is when he climbs up into the pipes is really, really good. So we've got the custodian goes running, manages to get the door shut on this primal man,
Yep.
gets the security guard to come
Gets the
down
night
there.
security guard who's drinking a Michelob,
Yep.
watching the game. Can you imagine this guy's night? He's
Yeah.
like, Jesus Christ, sitting here with a bunch of the fucking Harvard kids.
All you got to do is buzz people in and out. Simple job. I'll
Yeah.
watch the Red Sox. But
Next thing you know, a fucking Neanderthal is beating you to death.
with your own stick. Yeah.
Yeah.
He I think these two guys do the dumb move of going looking for it before
Oh,
police
yeah.
arrive, but they did the smart move of calling the police to say,
They called it first. Yeah, called for
yeah.
backup first. That's always call for backup.
But yes, so both the custodian and the security guard get pummeled by
Yeah.
the security guard's stick by the primal man. The police arrive just in time to see this primate run off, and they can't catch him. He runs loose in the city.
Oh my God. The minute he gets outside, I was like, oh, fuck no. He is
Yeah,
loose on the streets of Boston.
yeah.
Hell no. Hell no. I
He
love
wa
that his like kryptonite are dogs, though,
Yeah, that's his like kind of natural enemy is
because
maybe
it makes sense. Like
yeah.
packs of dogs, like have been kind of plaguing man since the beginning. We had to be like, fucking wolves. All right, maybe we'll just take like one. If we like take one and then we like take them into our pack, we can turn them into pugs, and then they're
Yeah.
cool.
Then they're cool. Those pugs will
But
protect us.
pugs are great, but like packs of wild dogs, absolutely not. That's we can't fuck with those because
No.
they will fuck your shit up.
The sequence with the dogs is great because it is very much like Primal Man learning
Yeah.
where food is, which is garbage cans,
Yep.
trying to fight, trying to position territorially with the dogs to get to the garbage cans. Can't. The dogs
The
run him
dogs like
off.
literally chase him up a drain pipe.
Yeah. And he manages to jump over this fence and land in the Harvard
He's
Zoo.
in the zoo. Okay, all right.
There's a rhino. Run. There are the elephants. Oh, I can work around the elephants. I'll
Yeah,
drink their
elephants are cool.
water. He reaches into the tiger cage for scraps of old meat and gets spanked by that
Swatted. Oh
tiger.
yeah, don't fuck with the tiger. That's
No.
not good.
Then
And
he
he sees
sees
his favorite.
sheeps and goats.
You know what I'd love? Some impala.
Hmm.
Little impala curry.
I would like mutton. I think a mutton
Yeah, a
would
little
be
mutton with
good.
mint
Hmm.
sauce.
But he manages to stone a sheep from the tree branch,
Sure.
drag it away, and start just eating it from the belly out. And then Zoo Security shows up. And we just see his reaction to start as he shines
Yeah.
his flashlight into this cage. And he's a real like, what the fuck? And he opens the gate, and there is a goat carcass. The camera widens, and there is a naked Edward Jessup lying next to it.
Just laying out in the sheep pen. Next
For,
shot, he is in jail.
uh, and Emily and Mason have to pick him up. I just his this relationship with Emily where I get being in love with someone so much that you will tolerate
Sure.
a lot.
Yeah.
But she gets his ass home and he's like, listen, you got to be patient with me. And I'm like, oh, what do you think I have been
What it would, yeah, the
to
last, what do
this
you call the last
point?
7 years? He's
Um,
like, but listen, I took more of the drug and I went back and then I became a primal man. And then I remember the dogs and I remember killing a sheep and I remember killing a dude. And she's like, oh,
uh-huh.
fuck. The doorbell rings and it's Mason. He's got all of his clothes. He's like, yeah, there's a lot of pandemonium going on at the college. Apparently, some sort of ape or monkey got loose in the basement. You wouldn't have brought a monkey with
Uh-huh.
you to your experiment, would you, Eddie? And I love it. Like this shot is so fucking chilling because it's actually the same shot, but in reverse or in negative as when Emily first meets Eddie. So like when Emily
Right.
first meets Eddie at the party, it's like they're like, you know, they're kind of like his friends are talking about him and they're like, ding dong, oh, that's Eddie. The door opens and it's like all white. Like I said,
He's
blonde hair, blue-eyed cream
fully
cheese
front lit.
Jesus.
Hmm.
Fully front lit. It's at the end of a hall and it's all like, oh, white light. And in this, he's at like, and they're like, oh yeah, you wouldn't have might have killed somebody or brought a monkey that killed somebody in the basement of Harvard, did you? And he's at the back, and he's like his hands are kind of like clawed,
Yeah.
like tense, and he is completely backlit and
Uh-huh.
completely black.
Yeah.
Psychological storytelling, moi,
Hmm.
absolute perfection.
Emily listens back to Edward's previous experiment, the one where he's talking about I am now becoming primal man and
I
I'm
love
hunting
this.
with them and blah blah blah. I'm eating the blood of a goat. And she starts becoming very curious because this kind of I mean she can't see it, but it's jiving with what he says. And then she hears
Yeah,
his roar or cackle, and it is her baboons.
yeah.
He is making the sound that those baboons in Kenya were making.
Like she's an expert in this field and
Yep.
she knows what that shit sounds like. And
Yeah.
she knows enough to be like, this is legit.
And he also could not imitate that sound because he has never taken any interest in my work. So there's no way he knows what monkeys,
Right?
primal primates sound like. She has a she even has a dream of the primal man being chased by the dogs. And so she calls Eddie.
I love it that she like listens to her instincts
Yes,
in this
totally.
moment. Like this is the same as like this the like the moment in which they're like, I think our house is haunted. Yes, I think so. She's like, I think my boyfriend might be haunted by a primal man. She's like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go with that gut instinct.
Yeah.
I think he might be right.
She calls him, gets him to come over, and she's like, I'm beginning to believe that you're not just having a hallucinatory experience. See, I'm going to tell you, I believe you. But also, I'm really scared and I don't want you to do this experiment anymore.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm trying to tell you that I love you. And he says, yeah, I know. But I think we might be onto something really huge.
Harsh.
But she does say, this is a really great moment. She's like, please stay, Eddie.
Yeah.
I know I hear you. Right now, I could use some love and reassurance. And she curls up into his lap on the couch and just holds him. And he, in this shot, seems to understand it. And he
Yeah.
is just quiet and puts his hand on her. And I'm like, that's a really nice gesture of not what I would need you to do. What
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
need personally is this.
And I think what makes this movie successful is casting an actor like William Hurt.
Uh-huh.
Because if you just look at the words on the page for this character, insufferable.
Hmm.
But when you put someone who's able to like convey so much physically in between the lines. Like you can see the moments in which he really feels like maybe he does love or has affection for Emily. He just can't say anything or
Yeah.
won't say anything or would rather talk about his fucking lecture on the first original thought or whatever. It would fall apart
Yeah.
without the chemistry between these two actors.
Yeah. Yeah, he is an exaggerated form of this, but we all know people like this, or maybe we even are people like this at times in our lives, which is the person who just cannot get out of their own space, right? Like I'm always
Sure.
in my personal journey.
Yeah.
And there are lovable qualities of people like this too, because inherently there's a good chance they are very interesting people.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm sure their journey is very multi-textured and
uh-huh.
interesting, but if you want to go with them on their journey, you are on their journey
Right.
often
Uh-huh.
rather than shared journey.
Yeah. Well, he's going to go through with one more experiment. Here's our final act.
Oh,
Cecil
I
Baldwin, we
mean,
are getting into the showdown
this
with
is crazy to me.
the origins of man.
This is kind of like this last act is like Poltergeist to me.
I totally wrote Poltergeist. This is absolutely.
Like this is like very Poltergeist to me. Um okay, so at least we've got like Arthur and Mason and Emily. They're like, "Okay, listen, we might as well do this one more time."
Uh-huh.
This time, why they're doing it in a fucking tank where they can't see what's going on? They put a little video camera on him.
Yep. So now
Sure,
they have a
that'll be
monitor.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be great. That won't fuck up at all. And they dose him up, put him in. It's been 2 hours. Emily's really nervous. She's like, pull him out, give him the antidote. I don't like this at all. But he starts making some weird ass noises.
Uh-huh. And that video screen, it is just showing him, but the video screen shows him transforming, but it is also showing flashes on the video screen
Yeah.
of these like surreal bad trip green screen effects. And
So
that's where they're
whatever's
like,
happening, yeah,
mm-hmm,
whatever's happening inside of there is not just happening to Eddie. It's now like an energy force is expanding outward from it.
yes. I just, it's so amazing how much, like, Spielberg and Toby Hooper had to have pulled from this movie to make
Oh, sure.
Poltergeist because
Yeah.
it's amazing how similar it is. Both incredible films. I don't mean to say it's stolen. I mean to say that like that's how art
No,
is
it's just
made.
the
But
lighting
it's
effects are very similar in
and
its etherealness.
and also that there's like a portal into another place that
Yes.
you have to pull somebody out of the primordial ooze from that portal.
Yeah.
Um, so Mason goes to the tank door, opens it, and it like the force blows him backwards. And Emily tries to go for it, and Mason is like, "No, don't go in there." He's
Yeah.
running out of that room.
He picks her up, takes her outside,
Yes,
kind of against her will, and just like
yes,
tosses her into the hallway
yes.
to save her life.
And the light is so bright, a little bit of like finale of Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost
Oh,
Ark sort
absolutely.
of thing
Yeah.
too. Like, don't look in the light, Marion.
Yeah.
Don't look in the light. Close your eyes. But the light is so bright. We see like Arthur is in his chair, but in a fully catatonic state.
That's horrifying to me.
So
Like he's
scary.
transfixed at the video screen.
Yeah. And finally, outside in the hallway, the lights stop, and Emily opens the door, and both Arthur and Mason are unconscious. The monitor is smashed. The tank is glowing, and the ceiling of that room, because it's the basement of this
Yeah.
building, is all the piping, the water pipes and air ducts, and they are all undulating.
Yeah.
And Edward appears as a giant blob man.
He kind of looks like a cancerous tumor.
Yeah, he's just lump. Like
Yeah,
that's
he is lump. He is lump. He is lump. He's in
he's
your
in my
head.
head. Yep. Yeah, that is his DC Comics villain name is
Yeah.
Lump. That's his alter ego is Lump. And then the explosion that bursts the window
Yep.
between the lab and the whatever. And then when she climbs through that window, the tank is gone and the floor is just a whirl of dry ice
It's just
gas.
vortex.
It's so beautiful. Like there's an overhead shot of this like the steam from the dry ice
Yeah, it's like
in a
water with
whirlpool
dry ice on top of it with a whirlpool in the center.
and a
And she's
glowing
like
light.
she's like wading through it,
It looks like the
trying,
Milky Way.
yeah, trying to get to the center. And she literally like looks down into the middle of this vortex and kind of like puts her hand in, sees Blobby Edward being all psychedelic and weird in the
Hmm.
middle of the primeval nothingness.
Yep. Well, I want to point out my dad joke of the moment that ran through my head. This is up there, like within Jaws, in Jaws, when the child at the hospital and the nurse says, "Well, he's going to be okay. He just had a little shock." And I'm like, "No, it was a big shock." But the joke, the dad joke of this one is, she is standing over a whirlpool, screaming, "Eddie!" And I'm like, "Yep, that is an eddy. That is what
Yeah.
a whirlpool is."
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Correct.
Whirlpools and
Good.
eddies.
Yes. And that's a wall. We're playing I Spy.
Uh-huh. Correctly identified.
But when she reaches into the whirlpool, shouting for Eddie, we then get the another like montage of the cosmos and cellular, the
A
stars
lot of
and
cells.
cellular structure,
A
and
lot of cells. This is, like if you've ever watched 1960s um, videos of like what they would show behind Jefferson Airplane concerts
uh-huh.
or like what they would show at like the factory, Andy Warhol's The Factory. This is what that is.
Right, right.
So it's like blobs of colored liquids hitting other colored liquids, cells dividing, cells going through corpuscles, kind of shit. This lasted a little long, in my opinion. It went on
Y-
for a minute.
yes, yes. Well, she does reach in there. She finds him, and he is fully uh, blob man,
He's fully blobbed.
fully blobbed, but there's a moment where it's like the two of them naked floating in space and she holds out her hands into the stars which all seem to like form into Edward's real
Unblobbed,
head,
unblobbed
unblobbed
body.
head. And then suddenly they're back in the lab together, both clothed in the clothing they were in before and completely drenched. And Arthur and Mason come to as well.
Now, I have a question for you, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
What do you think the market street value of this drug would be? Because he took this drug 3 times.
Yes. And well, okay.
First
The thing
time,
is,
you have a crazy trip. Second time, you turn into primal man and you completely change bodies. Third time, you become one with the universe. How much would you be willing to pay for this experience?
oh, for me, $0. I'm good. I
No,
feel
you don't.
just fine. You know what
No,
I
you're
love?
good.
I love bourbon in a cup. That's a
No,
nice
you don't want to blob out.
no, nope, nope.
Hey, hey, you want to take a hit of the blob? Your first one's free. First one's on the house.
The actual value is going to really strongly be based on how expensive it is to make. And if it's just strictly putting a little like human blood and weird mushroom into a soup, I don't know. That could get expensive. Some mushrooms are hard. You cannot grow
Those
them.
mushrooms are probably very rare,
Yeah,
very specific to that area. But you know what? You can synthesize a lot of that shit if you like
yeah,
study it closely in a lab.
true. It's like
But I
diamonds.
guarantee, the synthetic blob is not like the original.
No, it's not. Oh, they get Edward back home. It's what's really interesting is this is the first moment where we kind of the camera moves through the house, and I started noticing the stained glass windows in his house,
Yeah.
bringing back to Art Nouveau, these Art
Yeah.
Nouveau flowered
I know. I love them. They're
designs.
gorgeous.
And I had not, I don't know if it shows these to us earlier in the
I don't
film,
think so.
but I noticed them now, either because it's the first time they show them and they're noticeable, or because some of the same imagery that's on those stained glass windows was in this cosmic world.
Yes.
Really, really stunning. It's such a really cool trick. Mason he's still thinking it's only a psychedelic experience because they were
He passed out.
unconscious
Yeah.
for the disappearance of the tank.
He knocked his head out.
The explanation is just we did something that caused a power surge that actually caused crazy light outages all over town. It
Yeah.
made me think about was it Hurricane Sandy when it hit New York City in like 2011?
Sure.
Um, the Lower Manhattan, I think it was
Oh, the Transformers, when the
the
Transformers blew.
Transformers in
Yeah.
Lower Manhattan went out, and everyone in New York City and northern New Jersey saw a green flash of light,
Yeah.
and then
Oh, yeah.
all of their power went out. And that's
I
kind of
mean,
what
that
happened
still
here.
doesn't explain where the fuck that sensory deprivation tank went.
But they didn't see it. Only Emily saw it
No,
disappear.
no. The fact that it's not there anymore, like, where did it go, science guys?
Oh,
It's
yeah, that's
it
right.
was
You're right.
there.
Yeah.
Now it's not. I don't know of any other drug that would just completely dematerialize material like that.
Uh-huh.
I
Unbelievable.
also love the fact that this shot is like a one shot. So you've got like Emily tucking Eddie in bed, and then it kind of moves into the next room, and it's like Emily talking to Arthur, and then sort of Arthur talking to Mason, and then Emily talking to Mason. And it sort of ratchets up Emily's emotional state as she goes through each of these, and to the point where she gets to this last room and she's like on the verge of tears. She doesn't know what the fuck to do with all this
Yeah.
because she realizes she kind of pulled him back from the void.
Yeah.
What do you do with that information? She's like, if I had not have been there, he would have been blobbed out at the far reaches of the cosmos forever.
Yeah. Um, we leave Mason and Arthur to their fight over whether or not you can use an untested drug on people at a
Oh
major
my God.
university.
This is crazy because Arthur's like, I don't know. I'm like, he's all jazzed up on science. And Mason's like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine being like, hi, would you like to participate in a trial for Harvard
Yeah.
University?
Yeah.
Please take this pill. Tell us your experiences.
Yeah, that's right. So our final showdown between Edward and Emily. Now, this is minor, but I just want to point this out because there's so much in writing, and a lot of times directors and actors, when you write something for performers, a lot of times directors and actors will have the question of like the simplest version is, what's my motivation here?
It's my motivation.
Or sometimes the director will ask like, okay, so this scene here, what happened between the two scenes? Like, how did we you
Sure.
wrote this, why are
What's
we here
the
now?
moment before?
Yeah. Help me understand that, writer. Um, Now this scene is a huge day. They just had a huge day,
Hmm.
right? They essentially touched the face of God,
Hmm.
and she pulled him out of the void. She saw the void. She held the void in her hands,
Yeah.
and we have lived. And we are exhausted. We just had these two coworkers screaming in her bathroom,
Yeah.
an overlapping dialogue. She's like, "Y'all gotta go." And the next thing we know, she is asleep in the middle of the night. She is she falls asleep next to him on the couch. And then when she wakes up, she is naked on the couch with just the blanket half pulled up her.
Yeah.
And then he walks in naked and covers her. And I get the sense that Ken Russell is playing with like the naked body as the most pure primal form.
Yes. It's very Adam and Eve. Yeah.
But it sort of implies like, did y'all just fuck? Because like
Oh, I didn't get that at
after
all.
a
Oh
long day,
no.
I'm like,
No, I
I
didn't
kind
get
of
that at
don't
all.
feel like this right now.
No, no, no. I saw it as very non-sexual nudity.
I think I did too, but I just
It's
am
like
like,
it,
practically, why are your clothes off when you're sleeping on the couch? I was just
Oh,
asking the question of the human experience. Like, if you're going to fall asleep on a couch sitting up, typically you're not, if you take the time to
especially
take off your,
if it's a leather couch,
right,
sticky.
if you take the time to get your clothes off, you're not going to be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to stay on the couch. You would actually take the time to put a sheet on the couch,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah,
No,
that's
no.
all.
I saw this as very like they have regressed back to like Adam and Eve's state of
Totally agree. Yeah.
like they can't even like before they ate from the tree of knowledge kind of shit
Yeah.
because they don't even care whether they're naked or not.
Yes. I've been guilty of this, but this is where a director or an actor will ask me, like, what, what happened? Like, why, how did we get to this place? I'm like, I don't know. I just kind of like the way it sounded.
Yeah.
Like, what does this line mean? And I think this is Ken Russell really
Being
loving
like, I
this
like the way
Adam
it
and
looks.
Eve.
Yeah.
I just like the way it looks. But immediately my first thought was like, did they fuck? And then
Yeah.
after the scene, I realized what's happening. But there is a weird moment there where I was thinking too much on the practicality of it. But the next morning, he says, I'm starting to understand because you redeemed me from that pit, Emily. And what the other thing I understand is going back to my dad's story, wherein I realized in his death that life is all pain and no God could really be there if that's the case. But to look into the void is to realize the final truth of all things is that there is no truth. The truth is capital N, nothing. And so he's like, that's what I've learned and I don't like it.
These sound like some wedding vows to me, man. You may kiss the bride.
But he also scientifically has realized the only thing that kept this thing within me from devouring me is you. It's your
Yeah.
love. Love will get us through.
Love saved the day.
Hmm. And then he starts to transform
Oh
Cecil.
no, he starts getting the jiggly arm.
He gets Popeye arm, wavy Popeye arm. Blah, 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 blah.
And she says, fight it.
You made it real. You can make it unreal. She touches him and says, I love you. And then she turns into a lava monster.
Yes, she does. She turns into Lava Girl.
Yep.
She straight up turns into Lava Girl with flipper arms.
I love this. I would like to see this action series of Lava
This
Girl
is
and her sidekick Lump.
Lava Girl and Lump.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and you can tell she's not happy and she cannot change back. And so Eddie, the Lump Jessup has to like kind of like anger will himself out of Lump status by like slamming his arm into the wall to kind of like reboot himself.
Yeah. Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on
And
again?
really, that's exactly what it is. He's going to like will himself out of this state. And he's kind of like slamming his body back and forth in a tiny little hallway. And each time he does, there's like a flash of him, but it kind of changes colors. And he kind of does this enough times that he gets himself back. And then he hugs her and they disappear in a flash of light.
Uh-huh.
And they come back and they're back together again.
And they're
The
naked
end.
humans on the floor.
Naked humans again.
The end of this
The end.
movie is stunningly crafted, stunningly done, and absolutely stupid. I just
It's
thought it was so stupid.
love saves the day, Jeffrey.
And also just the pounding back and forth of like, it's never interesting to watch somebody just like, I just have to punch the evil out of me.
Just go raw. Yeah, 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 yeah.
It makes me think of like last week when you talked about your car. I think it was last week's episode when you talked about having to like smack the
Oh yeah,
odometer not
yeah,
working. You had to slap the dashboard.
yeah.
You're right. He's slapping the computer
He's
to
just gonna
make it
hit
work
that
right.
Xbox until it or hit
Yep.
that TV
Yep.
until it jogs back the picture.
Shall we rate this movie?
Yes, let's.
All right, let's start with rating it for approachability. How approachable is this if you are horror film averse, with one being the least approachable and 10 being super approachable? I would give Altered States like 7 out of 10 Mexican hiking trips, right? It's body horror, but On a body horror level, like I think it is like body horror light because we've watched Cronenberg for this show, and that is body horror heavy. And but the effects are cool. I think it all manages to be disturbing. There is that like gutted lizard, which I think is a real lizard that has been gutted. There is it's a lot of like bright and flashing lights and
Oh,
disturbing
yeah.
imagery.
Oh, if you have like light sensitivity issues, this is not the movie for you.
Yeah, it is art house eye fuckery is how I've
Yeah.
described this film. And I mean that in the nicest way. I really do. Like I think it's a great, really, really good movie, but also it's a lot. So you know, trigger warning on artsy pretension as well is the thing. But yeah, Cecil, as a horror movie, to speak nothing of approachability, how would you rate Altered States?
I talked a lot about this movie being a bit disjointed.
Mm,
So if there's four acts to this movie, uh, only one of those acts is a horror movie, unfortunately. And that's act three with the primal man. That movie, that act, so scary. That act, great.
yeah.
Act one, two, and four,
Yeah.
little less scary. So for that reason, I would say only 3 out of 10 sensory deprivation tanks,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Much more dramatic thriller with body horror
I
elements
mean,
to
it's
it.
got some
Yeah.
great elements to it. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. Like, but that primal man sequence, edge of your seat.
Yeah.
Like it reminded me a lot of like what um like The Howling did stretched out over the course of
Right.
that movie. But
Yeah.
this is just like in a 20-minute sequence.
Yeah. Let's figure out what movie we're going to watch next. You've got a scare die. I've got a style die. We will roll those up and see what movie fits those two things. So Cecil, on your scare die, if you roll a one, our next movie is Cursed. Two, vampire. Three, a wild card of a scare. Four, alien. Five, zombie. Six, psycho killer.
That's a five.
Zombie. Okay, let's figure out what type of zombie movie we get by matching it with the style I roll. If I roll a one, our style of our next film is sexy. Two, a one-word title. Three, a foreign language film. Four, something in a rural setting. Five, something from the 2000s, the noughties. Or six, a splatter film. Let's see what we got for zombies. Roll this up. Cecil, I got a one. We're gonna find
Sexy zombies.
sexy zombies, which
Why not? Why
not as
not?
hard as I thought this was going to be to find some ideas. But Cecil and I always write down our ideas of what would fit any of these possible roles, but we also look to our Letterboxd followers. We are at Random Horror 9 on Letterboxd, and we put all of these possible matchups in our lists, and you can contribute to some of these thoughts. Let me tell you about the ones I put on here, Cecil, and then let's check in to see what Letterboxd has to say. So some of this I'm going to define sexy as pretty simple, but
Sure.
Resident Evil.
Oh, yeah.
That's Mila Jovovich, right?
Oh, yeah.
Fucking sexy as hell.
Oh, absolutely.
And zombies. Warm Bodies. This is a more
Yep.
like cutesy sexy. Like this is In Love with a Zombie.
I think that was like the first, like, we're going to take a zombie movie and put a rom-com skin over top of it.
Yes. Yes. There's Night of the Comet, another early 80s feature.
I've never seen this, and
I
I
never
want
have
to so
either.
bad. Valley Girl Zombies. Come
Yeah, Valley
on. It
Girls
sounds
versus
so
Zombies.
good.
I am only basing sexiness off of stills I've seen from this, which is just the most perfect 80s
Oh,
Valley
like I want to
Girl
see
style.
Aquanet. I want to see big hair. I want to see like fuchsia makeup.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to see like asymmetrical cut
Yeah.
shirts. Yeah. Another one, Planet Terror, Robert
Oh,
Rodriguez,
very
Grindhouse.
sexy.
This is like space zombies sort of thing and
And no, I think
Rose.
just zombies.
Okay,
I think
zombies,
normal
zombies.
zombies, but it literally is like starts in a go-go dancing bar.
Okay, okay. And then I think maybe you put this one on here. The
And then I put
Cemetery
this one
Man.
here, Cemetery Man, which is currently available on Shudder.
Okay. Della
And it's one
Morte,
of
Della More.
Della
Yeah.
Morte Dellamore, which is one of those that disappears for a while. So I was like, oh my gosh, it's available now. So I might as well get it up on the grid while we
Uh-huh.
have it access to it. It's about a guy who works at a mortuary and the bodies keep coming back and his girlfriend dies, but he just can't stop being in love with her even after
Oh
she comes
yeah.
back from the dead.
This is so good. I had forgotten about this movie entirely. Let's look at so those are the ones we came up with. Let's look at what Letterbox followers had to say. See, so what did they have to say?
Bolt City Brain recommends Shivers, 1975. Early
Oh,
Cronenberg. Parasites turn the residents of an apartment building into sex crazed freaks.
did we
Zombie
watch
adjacent. Absolutely.
did we
Yeah, this
watch
is
this
one.
one?
I don't think so.
What? There's like a 70s Cronenberg in an apartment building movie. I feel
Is
like
it? Well,
there
there.
was another Cronenbergy zombie movie. Uh
Rabid.
Rabbit, that's it. That's it. There
No,
you go. Thank you.
Shivers is like much more like it's like what like Rabid is like there's a similar vibes, but this is much more sexy.
Yeah.
So definitely
Okay.
nailed the sexiness, Bull City Brain.
Yeah.
Ghostlight AK recommends Zombie Strippers, 2008.
Self-explanatory. Bless you.
Sorry. I know it'll come surprise you, but it's a movie about zombie strippers or strippers who become zombies. Invisible Orange. I don't know if it's sexy enough, but throwing my vote for Lisa Frankenstein.
Okay.
I've not seen this movie. I really
Haven't
want
either.
to. It looks very, it's like, uh, very like millennial kind of vibes,
Hmm.
like build your own prom date kind of thing. Chuck a Nut recommends Life After Beth, 2014. A young man's recently deceased girlfriend mysteriously returns from the dead, but he slowly realizes she is not the way he remembered her. Aubrey Plaza
Uh-huh.
is sexy.
Sure.
Monstrum recommends, the National Theater live production of Frankenstein with Benedict Cumberbatch as the creature, 2011.
Oh, and it looks like Ghostlight AK gives us a link
Recommended
to that
the
one.
Johnny Lee Miller version of the creature.
Yeah, but it looks like that's the National Theater archive, right?
Yeah, because they did a
Yeah.
they did a where they reversed it
Yeah.
in
Okay.
performance.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that might be interesting. Return to our theatre roots. Crowned Sealy seconds Shivers.
Hmm.
D Coyote says big yes to zombie strippers.
Oh, Jenna
Is
Jameson and
Jenna
Robert England.
Jameson and Robert England. Okay,
Okay.
now you're selling it. Now you're
Uh-huh.
selling it here. Ganymede's Cup recommends Dead Girl, 2008. American sexploitation horror flick. Let's see. The movie stars Shiloh Fernandez, teenage boys who discover a naked female zombie portrayed by Jenny Spain. One of the boys wants to keep her as a sex slave, and the other objects, and their friendship is tested. Gosh, I
Okay.
hate it when that happens. Cronenberg TA, Return of the Living Dead. Excellent
Oh,
suggestion
yeah.
there. Two bumbling employees at a medical warehouse, supply warehouse, accidentally release a deadly gas into the air, and the vapors cause the dead to rise again as zombies. Features a scene where Linnea Quigley strips naked and dances naked in a cemetery.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Weaponized Toaster seconds Zombie Strippers and Resident Evil and Return of the Dead. River Integral 64. Scout's Guide to Zombie Apocalypse. What could possibly go wrong when three buddies decide to join the Boy Scouts? When bloodthirsty undead ghouls invade their once peaceful town, it's up to kind-hearted Ben, quick-witted Carter, and class clown Augie to save the day. With
Great.
help from the beautiful but tough cocktail waitress, the boys must put their scouting skills to the ultimate test to save mankind and earn their zombie killing badges. A scene with zombie strippers and another scene where zombies' boobs come out.
So, hold on.
Bless you.
I got your sneezes. There's definitely a thing with zombie stripper
Yeah.
happening a lot in
Yeah.
several of
This
these
is like
movies,
three movies at
where it's
least
just
with
like,
zombie strippers.
what if naked
Strippers.
zombies?
What if strippers, but zombies? Fifth Hammer, seconds Cemetery Man,
Uh-huh.
and also recommends Zombie Honeymoon. Dennis and Danny are newlyweds honeymooning at the Jersey Shore. Danny's sunbathing, a disturbing creature attacks. Dana regains consciousness and he seems unharmed. However, it becomes clear that something has gone horribly wrong and he develops a desire to eat flesh.
Uh-huh.
Denise does her best to support her husband. Volatile Spider seconds warm bodies. Sarah Scarehound recommends Contracted 2013. After being drugged and SA'd at a party, a young woman contracts what she thinks is an STD, but she begins to think it's worse when she starts shedding maggots. I don't know
Nope.
what is sexy about any of that. I'm
No.
unclear,
No.
but thank you for the suggestion.
Uh-huh.
Dr. Rachel DR, second Cemetery Man. Katura, seconds De La Morte De La Mort, Cemetery Man. Jacob Chipman, seconds Return of the Living Dead. Excuse me. Return of the Living Dead 3 might be a good fit.
Okay.
Melinda Clark plays a freshly reanimated zombie. The horror trope of bumbling cops, except it's the bumbling military. Pretty standard zombie horde runs amok, causes trouble, story otherwise. TLDR Horror recommends Frankenhooker. I thought about Frankenhooker. Absolutely. Horror
Yeah.
comedy. Mad scientist rebuilds his girlfriend from the body parts of dead hookers.
Yeah.
And
Yay.
uh recommend Cemetery Man.
Yeah. Okay, so it's so interesting because with a style like sexy, it's really tough, right? Because like even from my suggestions at the beginning, like you can tell it's kind of all over the map. And
Sure.
I having just watched Piranha 3D, I
Yes.
will tell you, I love boobs. I'm
Uh-huh.
always internally, sometimes externally, if it feels appropriate, we'll say, wow,
Really?
if I
You
see
just go,
boobs.
wow. Yeah.
However, I don't think boobs inherently are sexy.
Yes.
Now, in context, extraordinarily sexy within a sexy contextual narrative of building to that point. So there is something where like hookers or just nudity doesn't feel like it's hitting the bar of sexy to me, that we need one of two things in my mind. One, a love story that builds the sexiness to it,
Sure.
or two, it needs just sexy in its style. Like I think about like Night of the Comet. There's probably no boobs in that movie, no nudity, and probably no love story. Maybe I'm wrong. I've never seen it. But the style of it, the vibe is sexy because it's early 80s Valley Girl.
Sure.
That's my thoughts. I don't know what
No,
you think.
absolutely. And I think here's the trick is that like sexy and vampire often go hand in hand. But like
Right.
sexy and zombie are a little bit harder because you can take anything and put zombie over top of it.
Yeah.
Zombie priest, zombie doctor, zombie
Yes.
cop, whatever.
Yeah.
So if we're talking, but sexy. So
Uh-huh.
I think honestly the biggest contenders are going to be Planet Terror,
Yep.
Night of the Comet. I don't know if Night of the Comet is sexy though.
You're
I think it's
probably right.
like the trailer I've seen for it seems more action film
Yeah.
to me, like action comedy zombie
Yeah.
film, which is not really sexy in my mind.
No, but
Um,
Planet Terror has a sexy style vibe
Sexy
to the
style.
action. Resident Evil, I think, might
Shivers,
fit
here's
that.
the thing. Shivers is about sex, but it is probably the least sexy movie you will
Right.
add. Like, it is a movie to make you go, ick.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Do not put your anything near my anything.
Yeah.
But honestly, I really think De La Morte De La Mort is the
I do
choice
too.
because it's a sexy movie. It takes the undead and finds a way to make it gothic gorgeous,
Yeah.
which something like even Warm Bodies, which is a romantic comedy, which is it sexy? Maybe. It's
Yeah.
cute. It's funny. But I think there's something sexy about Cemetery Man.
Yeah, and going with the same vibe of like saying like Valley Girls are sexy, Mila Jovovich, Rose McGowan, sexy people.
Yes,
Fucking 1994,
I know.
Rupert Everett is maybe the sexiest person
That's
alive.
that's it.
Yeah.
It's also like Planet Terror Resident Evil is kind of that like Harvey Weinstein era sexy.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And us also like, let's go over to Europe during that time period.
I agree. Let's see their version of sexism instead
Yeah,
of the
I
Weinstein
know,
Brothers.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've made a decision. Thank you all for listening and for your contributions on Letterboxd. Thank you, Cecil, for talking with me. If y'all have thoughts on Altered States or ideas for other movies that would have been good sexy meets zombie, let us know on Instagram at Random Horror 9 or the same handle over on Patreon, where we have public discussion threads of each and every episode, and you don't have to be a paying member to participate in those and watch Della Morte or Cemetery Man with us this week. And come on back next Tuesday for a new episode. Have a restful night with no gringo tourists drinking your soup and killing your lizard or nothing. Boo.
Boo.